Well, this may be hard to believe, but it has been 27 years since John Deere introduced GPS. And as much as ag tech has changed in that time, it's where the world of ag tech is going. That may really blow your mind. And during CES last week, we had the chance to exclusively sit down with John Deere's Chief Technology Officer, Jahmy Hindman, to pull back the curtain and see where technology and agriculture may be going in the years ahead. Let's start just from CES. Why this year did John Deere decide, okay, we're going to step up our presence and have such a large presence here at CES?
Yeah, I think it's important for the world to know where their food comes from. I think it's important for people to know the technology that goes into food production in particular. And there's no better stage to tell that story than CES. It maximizes the number of people that get to hear it to a population, frankly, that really needs to know about it and really needs to hear it.
Well, as Chief Technology Officer, you may have a little bit of bias, but is John Deere a technology company?
No doubt. And I think it's often understated how much technology is in our machines and in the production systems themselves, and how much technology farmers deploy on the farm today. I think there's no doubt that Deere is a technology company, but we're also a manufacturing company, right? And none of the technology works in and of itself. You still have to have the equipment like the sprayers and the tractors and the combines to bring that technology into the field and make it useful.
Dude, when you look 20 years ago, a lot's changed, but a lot hasn't. When you look at farmers, they're saying, well, we still want to be able to really digest this data, use that data, and make some real-time decisions. But it seems like that is changing. In your opinion, is it, and why?
Yeah, I think we've historically been data-rich and insight-poor, right? A lot of data has been at the fingertips of growers, but it doesn't necessarily surface itself to insights that you can make good decisions out from. And I think we're just beginning to start to get into, maybe in the last 5 years, an environment where that data is becoming more insightful. We're figuring out ways to draw conclusions from it, whether I need to change crop rotation, or whether I need to, I've got a water problem in this particular field, or I need to put more nutrients on in this location. Those things are starting to surface because of the data, but I think that's a relatively recent thing. If you look at Operation Center as an example, and the usage of that, not just in desktop but in mobile platform, it started to pick up substantially, and I think it's because farmers are seeing value in it. They're seeing that it can improve their outcome with that information, and it's served to them in a way that makes sense and is intuitive.
Where has the disconnect been, do you think, in the past?
I think for us, part of it's been needing to understand deeply what's important to a grower, what information is useful to them, and how do you want to see it. And we can't expect farmers to be data scientists, right? That's our job. And so we need to be able to understand what questions they're asking and what problems they're trying to solve, so that we can serve that information up to them in a way that's digestible and easy to understand.
Well, in a bit we can get into where you see us going in the next decade. But when you look behind you and seeing things like the See and Spray technology here that's available today, is that a hint of what's to come?
Oh, no doubt. I think what you're seeing on the floor today, whether it's See and Spray or autonomy, those are foundational technologies that we're going to continue to build on over time, right? You look, See and Spray as an example, the delivery of herbicides is step one, but you can start to think about things like growth regulators in cotton. You can think about things like perhaps other types of chemicals that get applied on the farm as being able to be moderated through See and Spray. Those are all opportunities for us once you have the ability to sense something in the field and then act on it. And autonomy is the same way. We've made a down payment on autonomy for the future with this tillage solution, mostly because it's the easiest place for us to start. It's the most practical from a technology perspective place for us to start. But eventually that's going to become an autonomous planting opportunity. It's going to become an autonomous grain cart opportunity. When we get tractor jobs finished, we'll look at sprayers, we'll look at combines. And our goal is by 2030, in certain production systems, to be able to have, if a grower chooses to, a fully autonomous production system all the way through spring tillage and planting all the way through harvest at the end.
But that's not going to be the only offering, right? I mean, how are you making sure that still there is that choice there?
Yeah, well, there's a reason there's a cab still on the tractor, right? There's a lot of growers that maybe don't want the autonomy solution or don't see value in it for them at this point in time, that still want to be able to operate the machine. There's a lot of jobs that are done on the farm that we won't make autonomous, right? That you want to move snow in the wintertime in your driveway. You're going to do that from the cab of the tractor, right? And then there's just also, as a person that spent a lot of time in a tractor seat, there's just an emotional attachment and a satisfaction that you get of seeing the work done yourself. And so there's a reason that cab's still on the tractor. I think that's an important part of it.
Well, when you look at See and Spray, no longer are you managing really by the field. For weeds right now, you're kind of managing by that plant. But for corn, soybeans, cotton, some of these other row crops that we're looking at, how far are we away from really not just managing a field, but managing by the plant all the way from start to finish?
Yeah, we're closer than we've ever been before, right? And it's different based upon geospatial distance between plants. Like corn's the easiest one for us to think about because it's the furthest apart, right? And so the geospatial resolution is the most coarse. Soybeans are harder because population is higher, on a per acre basis. Cotton in the same way. But we're getting really close to being able to, once we know where every plant is geospatially, the exact latitude and longitude of that plant, we can start to then understand and develop this data set around each individual plant. And today, that's practical to do for corn, frankly. We're right on the cusp of being able to do that for soybeans and cotton and other crop types. It gets much harder when you get into small grains and higher density populations.
So what's key? Is it the cameras that are on that really are the eyes of the machine? Is it more of the artificial intelligence? I mean, I know it all works together, but what is the key link there?
Yeah, it all works together. Like that we should underscore that. I think the gift of vision to a piece of agricultural equipment is it's the same as the gift of vision to a human, right? It's the richest sense that we have. It creates the most information that we can use to process and make good decisions from. And that's why we started with it. It's not the only way to sense things in a field, but it's the best way to sense many things that are in the field. And we're just beginning to unlock the opportunity that having vision in a field gives you. So if you think about having cameras on the tractor for perception reasons for autonomy, cameras on a sprayer for See and Spray, all of a sudden you get the ability to document your field at high resolution from a graphical perspective and understand actually what's happening in that field. You can look at an individual plant if you want. You don't have to be there, right, to see it. That's a real benefit, and we're just beginning to unlock sort of what the opportunities are in that. See and Spray is just a down payment on what that future looks like.
Why has John Deere gotten so good at being able to train some of these data sets? What's changed?
So we've invested heavily in the infrastructure necessary to acquire data for engineering purposes, right? So we literally have fleets of people that go out with backpacks and cameras and walk through farm fields and take pictures of weeds and in different growth stages and in different shading environments and all of these things, right, to help start to seed, no pun intended, seed the training sets. But then also as we've started to put machines into the field, we've started to be able to collect information in real customer fields that helps us train models to be better at what they do based upon real customer data, right? Did we miss a weed? If we missed a weed, we want that image so that we can go train on it and never miss it again, right? It's this idea that it always gets better time after time. So that data flywheel for us is just beginning to start because we started to field these machines. They're starting to push data to us that is useful for us to train those models and make them better.
It's moving so fast. And so when you talk to some farmers, some are fearful that it's moving so fast that they won't be able to keep up. So is John Deere serving these farmer customers? What are you doing to make sure that even though this technology space is moving so quickly, that farmers still are absorbing everything and keeping up with the changes that are occurring?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, and it is maybe one of the biggest challenges for us. And it's not that farmers can't keep up, it's that we need to make the technology digestible. The user experience has to be, we talk about it as walk up easy, right? You have to be able to, you shouldn't have to be an engineer to run the equipment. Shouldn't have to be an engineer to set up things like auto track turn automation, right? And so we're working hard to make sure that the user experience is seamless, that it's consistent across all of our products. It hasn't always been that way, admittedly, and that anybody can walk up to the machine, fire it up, turn on the Gen 4 display and navigate their way through setting up the technology and using it. And when they can't, we rely on things like remote display access as an example, right? So that the dealers and maybe even Deere can help inform that customer and train whoever happens to be using that equipment at that point in time how to use the technology and maximize the benefit.
As you see really John Deere really on the leading edge of some of this, are you working to make sure that you can use this with other types of equipment, with other brands, really so that it all is integrated into one system? Is that a goal?
I think it will always be easier for us to optimize the performance when everything's green, right? Because we know how everything works in that case, and it's seamless and it communicates seamlessly and effortlessly. That said, we know that's not reality, right? Not every farm is an all green farm. And so there is a need for us to think about how does the technology, how does the tractor, for example, that pulls that tillage tool autonomously work when the tillage tool may not be a green tillage tool, it might be something else. And we're actively working to address that because we know it's a need.
5 years, 10 years? I mean,
soon. It better be sooner than that, for sure. And on the autonomy side of things, our goal is to have that fully autonomous production system in place by 2030 in corn and soybeans. And so for tillage, we're working on that now. We would like to have that tillage solution, completely solved for, in quotes, mostly completely solved for in the next couple of years.
Startup Collaborator, the Collaborator program. It's very interesting how you collaborate with some of these companies. I sat across one of them at dinner last night, and she was just so complimentary of how you really are a mentor as well. Why was that so important to start partnering with some of these startup companies?
Yeah, so not every good idea starts in John Deere, right? I think that's first and foremost a recognition, and humbly, lots of people have great ideas. So it's our way of being able to expose ourselves to things that we aren't thinking about, technologies that we aren't thinking about, ways to solve problems that we didn't come up with, right? And understand if those can be applicable in agriculture. Not all of these companies know whether their technology is going to be applicable in ag or not. We give them an opportunity to explore that, with ourselves and with our dealers and our customers sometimes, and understand if that technology plays well or not. That doesn't always lead to fruition. We don't always end up, working with that particular company, but it's important, I think, for agriculture for us to explore that, because where else would that happen?
What do you think has been the biggest success story so far with the within the Collaborator program?
I think overall it's been our ability to quickly assess technologies that we wouldn't have otherwise been participating in or maybe looking at. Like, we have a fixed amount of resources internally, and so this gives us the ability to multiply the multiplier effect of being able to test different things that frankly are high risk, but end up having, they're high risk in terms of technology. We don't know if they're going to work, but we do it in a low risk way. Right? And I think that's the biggest benefit to us from the Collaborator.
Is that part of the reason that we're seeing some of these technologies really now be useful for farmers? I mean, there's so much that happens in Silicon Valley that then when you get it on a Midwest farm, it just doesn't make sense. They really don't, necessarily understand the need. And I think some farmers have been burned by that in the past. So is that why that's changing a little bit?
Yeah, there's no doubt. Like, it has to work on the farm, right? And what better place for that to happen with a startup company than through a John Deere test farm, as an example.
So when you introduce new technologies today, is there an expectation that that's going to provide an ROI in 1 year, 2 year? I mean, is that when you're introducing a new technology, is that part of the equation? Yeah,
so we've actually started to change the way we introduce technology. And if you look at See and Sprayer Autonomy, they're good examples of that. We're not rolling it out whole scale, full volume all at once, right? We are experimenting with customers with See and Spray as an example in cotton, soy, and corn with a handful of customers, trying to understand how does it benefit them? How do they digest the technology? What's the impact to that farm from a financial perspective? Does the technology make sense for them? Does it return something for them? And if so, how quickly does it return something for them? And that's different. Every farm's different, right? It's different size, different production system, different crop types, different ownership structures. That gives us the ability to sort of understand how impactful the technology can be across a wide range of farming operations.
You talk to a lot of farmers. How many farms do you think you've been on in the past couple of years alone?
I don't know, 100, 150, 200 maybe.
Do you prefer to be out in the field?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. I'm much more comfortable on a farm than I am here.
Well, as you communicate, is it just early adopters? Is it some that maybe aren't fully using some of the technology?
The whole range, like all the way from folks that don't use technology today, but maybe are interested in it, maybe not, all the way to power users, right? That are some of our lead user groups as an example, people that we put beta software, we push beta software to so they can test it for us, and all different production systems, from our high value crops, almonds and citrus orchards, to corn, soybeans, to small grains, lentils, chickpeas, those sorts of things in Western Canada. That's why I love agriculture. Like, it's so diverse, and our customers do something that's just so important for the globe and for the world population. I think there's no better place to work.
So out of those conversations, what have you discovered has been the biggest obstacle for farmers actually adopting some of this technology? I
think you touched on it already. I think a lot of it's user experience, right? Is it intuitive and simple to use? And let's face it, when you go set up a planter, you do that usually once, right, in a season. and 12 months later you got to go do it again. I forgot everything that I had to learn 12 months ago, right, by that point in time. I get that, and if it's not simple to do and I have to relearn it and it's complicated, that's an impediment to me. I don't want to spend those hours, especially during planting season, trying to refigure out how to hook up my planter, right? And so I think that user experience and making it super easy to use the technology is probably the biggest hurdle we have to overcome.
Okay, so switching topics real quick, the electric tractors, okay? Big talk of that on social media this year. You see an electric excavator that's here at the show.
Yep.
Are we going to see all electric tractors?
In certain power levels with certain customer duty cycles, the answer is probably yes. And in rough terms, I would say roughly 100 horsepower and under, and relatively light duty cycles. Lithium-ion chemistry batteries can work. Like, you can package enough energy into the tractor to make that work. As you get into higher power levels, the answer to that's no. In the keynote yesterday, I talked about the 8R tractors. When I ran the numbers on if you powered that with a lithium-ion battery today, it's twice the volume, twice the weight, twice the mass, and 4 times the cost. Like, that just doesn't pencil, right? And so as you get into some of those higher horsepower applications, renewable fuels from a carbon offset perspective actually make more sense to us than electrification. Things like renewable diesel from soybean oil or canola oil, or ethanol as an alternative in a compression ignition engine would be a more interesting solution at the higher power levels.
Is that something you're exploring and looking into
Absolutely.
even more
Yep.
now?
Yep. Well, the machines today will run fully renewable diesel. The issue today is more about the availability of that at a price point that makes sense.
Why do you think there is then this misconception from farmers that John Deere is pushing all electric tractors, even on those higher horsepower pieces of machines?
It didn't come from us, so it's a bit of a mystery. I don't really know the genesis of that or where it started. I think the buzz around electrification generally, in on-highway sort of carried over and moved into ag, and it became a thing of its own. And it does have a place. I'm not going to say that electrification doesn't have a place in agriculture, but it just, right now, just from a pure physics perspective, not at the high power levels.
Well, and you had the U.S. Energy Secretary that was just in the booth. I mean, is that some of the things that you're trying to communicate
Absolutely.
to the administration even?
Yeah, absolutely. There's not a single solution that works for everybody, and that single solution is certainly not electrification, I think. It is a good solution in some cases, but not in all cases. And so, we had Secretary Granholm here. That was one of the points that I tried to make to her. Hopefully, that resonates.
Last question. Okay, wrap it up. Chief Technology Officer of John Deere, where do you see the average row crop farm 10 years from now? What does that look like to you?
Hopefully a lot more predictable than farming is today. And I'd say predictable in the sense that labor, where you're not worried about labor anymore, because you've got an ability, whether you use it all the time or not, for the machines to do some of the work themselves. Maybe it's not all of the work, but some of it themselves. I do think we will be to much closer to plant-by-plant management at that point in time, especially in coarse grains, than we are today. And that's going to unlock the ability for us to do much more of this data analytics and be much more prescriptive in managing the overall crop and the overall production of that crop and our inputs to that crop on a plant-by-plant basis.
In the short term, how big of a limitation is the supply chain? Is that hindering how quickly you're able to introduce?
No doubt. Absolutely, it's been an issue. Supply chains have been highly disrupted in the last 12, 18, 24 months. It's progressively getting better. Our third quarter and fourth quarter of last year showed us the improvement in our ability to deliver the products that are being ordered to the marketplace. I expect that to continue in the first quarter of this fiscal year for us. And then our supply base is telling us that things get markedly better as we get towards the last half of the year. That said, anything can happen, right? And so we're trying to prepare for every eventuality. But it is, we're not just hearing that it's progressively getting better, we're sensing it, we're feeling it, we're seeing it come through in our deliveries. So as long as things continue on that trajectory, I feel pretty good about next year.
Okay, what's the one thing you want farmers to know? Leave us with that.
I think the one thing that I would want farmers to know is we very much care, John Deere very much cares about trying to understand what's important to them and trying to deliver to that. And that takes a conversation between farmers and John Deere, and we're really happy to have those conversations and super excited whenever they occur and super excited to listen.
Thank you to Jahmy, and we took an even deeper dive into how the technology that John Deere is creating will allow you to manage your farm plant by plant. You can catch my full conversation with Deere's Chief Technology Officer on our Farm Journal YouTube page. Well, we have more to show you from CES later in the show, but first, John Phipps.